Hello everybody and welcome back. In this video solution, we are going to dive into distinct subsequences. It's a hard problem, but we'll soon see how to break it down into a medium one. We'll get to that and how we can actually think about it, the intuitions and the observations required to get there. But first, we'll start with the input-output format. So you're given two strings S and T, and S sort of represents the source and T represents the target string. And we have to count. So T is sort of the target string, and we have to find all of the subsequences inside of S that matches T. And whatever strings we find, we can just take a count of them and return that as the answer. So I want to talk about subsequences first because that is going to lead us to the brute force solution and how it will not work. So let's consider the case of ABC, and we want to find all of the possible subsequences of ABC. I've written down a couple of them here. And the idea behind subsequence is that you can delete or skip over characters. So basically inside of ABC, you can choose to not skip over or delete any characters, and you can get ABC as the final answer. You can also choose to delete B in the middle, and you can have AC as one possible answer. Alternatively, you can choose to delete C and you'll have AB as the answer, and similarly, you can do it for every single possible case. And for the convenience of explaining, I'm going to call this skipping instead of deleting because skipping is a lot easier. And what do we observe? What is the biggest thing that's standing out to us? Is this box over here. Because if you want to enumerate all of the subsequence of ABC, then it's going to take order of 2 to the power n time. And we may have to store every single one of them, so that may take order of 2 to the power n space as well. Why 2 to the power n? That's because you have the option of either skipping over the element or not. You have either 0 or 1 as the possible options. Skip or not skip. And you can do this for every single element in this string, and there can be n total elements. So 2 times 2 times 2 all the way up till the end. Clearly this solution is 2 to the power n, but will it work? Let's take a look at this constraint here. And this says that the string length of both of them could be 1000 characters, which means that n could be 1000. Clearly the brute force solution will not work and we'll need something else. 2 to the power 1000 is just mind-blowingly huge, so we want something else. And as I always suggest, go for observations. Look at and write down some very small little basic cases and try to see what's happening in them. Create your ideas and hypotheses from them and build up from it. Let's actually do that. So we have S and T as a small example of ACB and AB over here. Pretty simple, and we can find only one possible case while deleting C. So we can have ACB like so. Okay, what about a string which is bigger, ACBAB, with the target as AB only? The above did not exactly point to any interesting things, so maybe this will help. And so it looks like we can sort of find all of the permutations and combinations. So let's say that you're looking at A right now. For this given A, I can find all of the possible places where A is there in the S. So I find this guy and this guy. We find 2 A's. Similarly for B, we have 2 possible cases here and here. And so we have 2 cases for A, 2 cases for B, total of 4 cases, and maybe we can write down all of them and see which one work out and which one don't. We find out that 3 of them do work out indeed. Think about why the 4th one does not work. Okay, maybe this is something better. Like instead of just being chaotic and enumerating every single thing, maybe we can just go for this combination thing. We can look at A, find all of their places inside of S, then we can look at B, find all of their places, and so on and so forth we can go. In fact, this is pretty much the core of the solution. Let's actually formalize this a bit more. Let's look at even a bigger, more complicated case of X, A, C, B, A, B, C, B, C. And you're given the target as A, B, C. What do we do in this case? It's no longer possible to enumerate and brute force. Even it's harder for us to do right now. So we'll look at the combinations things and we'll look at A and we'll try to find out all of the places where A was there. Similarly for B and C. formally speaking, T, the target string, tells us what to look for. So we are sort of focusing on target and we're focusing on T, and T is going to give us characters which we can then search inside of A, which we can search inside of S. So Ti says that I'm currently looking for element T of I. Ti is basically the pointer saying that I'm looking for this guy. And we can sort of move this pointer forward as we please. This actually helps a lot. And maybe we can do the same for S as well. Maybe we can have another pointer for S. So we'll have another thing for S. Okay, so now we have two pointers, Ti and S of I. And we can move them back and forth, and we can see, first of all, what do they point to? Ti points to what I'm currently looking for, and Si is what I'm currently looking at. Si is the current guy, which is going to tell me that, okay, I'm currently looking at X right now, and Ti tells me that, hey, I don't want a X, I don't care about X, I want A. Can you get me A? So Ti is constantly asking that, get me A, okay? So Si will sort of agree to Ti and move forward. In fact, if you look at it, Si will always move forward. Si is sort of the pointer to this S string, and we are sort of scanning the string one by one, character by character, looking for those elements in Ti. So Si always moves by one, right? Si is sort of scanning this entire string, so it always moves by one. Now, when does Ti move? I've written the answer already, but think about, when does Ti move? When does Ti need to move? If you have found all of the possible cases for A, then you can say that, you know what, I found all of the cases for B, now I can just find all of the cases for B, then all of the cases for C, and then maybe we can see what combinations are being made. Okay, so let's now actually talk about these combinations things. We've figured out this Ti and Si kind of thing right now. That's great, we have found a way to iterate over both of these strings, but how do we still find their combinations? That still looks like a complicated task. So we'll do it with a visualization and try to understand it. And this is sort of where the recursive thinking comes into play. This is a bit complicated, so we'll go step by step. Let's say that I am at this current yellow bar. The yellow bar says that I am currently at this point of time. All of the things that have happened before are my past, and all of the things that are going to happen in the future, all of the elements after this current time are the future elements. So I've splitted this time into past and future. And what I'm trying to do is say, for a given A, for one given particular A, I'm giving you that, can you find me all of the possible B's after it? Right? Because we have to still maintain the structure of B coming after A. We can't have messed around structure. We can't have BA. We always have to find AB, because Ti says that I'm going to first find A, then only I'm going to find B, and only then I'm going to find C. So this is sort of restricting our structure. And so with this current time specifying, we have A here, and this is the current time. Now we ask the question, Ti is saying, hey, can you get me B? Can you find B for me? So Si will agree to it and say that, okay, I'm going to scan and I'm going to try and find all of the B's for you. So it goes around in the future. This is still in the future. We're still over here. Okay, this is the current time, but we're trying to sort of see what happens in the future if we pick this, if we are at this current time. Okay, so Ti says go find B for me, and Si will iterate over all of these guys and get you these B's. And these sort of B's are inherently linked back to A, saying that A is now currently containing all of the information for what happens into the future. Okay, let's pick one more case of B and we'll see what happens then. And this should clear up a lot of things. Give me a sec. Okay, cool, we're back. So let's take the case of first B. Okay, so let's take the case of first B. Okay, now when we consider this B, we have the current time moved forward, right? You considered A already, that's fine, but now we already considered also B. So B is going to go into our past. B is something we've already considered. We have already taken the decision to consider this particular B. Now our time is right now here. Again, we want to look into the future. This time Ti is demanding us to find C's, right? Why C? Because look at this guy over here. T is ABC, so Ti first found out A, then B, and then C. So Ti is currently looking for C's. And so we'll look into the future and we'll find all of the occurrences of C. And these C's are again inherently linked back to B, right? B is sort of looking out in the future, hey, can you get me C's? Can you get me C's? Ti is looking for C's. So once we find those C's, we'll link back to the particular B. And this B will again link back to this particular A. Let me zoom out and you can see this better, and feel free to pause and try to see what's going on. We have sort of this recursive structure where we are at this current time, but we're looking and trying to find out information from the future and bring it to the present. This is the entire goal. Okay, now let's solidify this more and let's come to a more solid recursion logic. The input is Si, Ti. We want always two pieces of information. What is the current time, which is given by Si, right? This is the current time. This specifies that we're looking at this point of time and we want to look into the future. Okay, the output is going to be 1 if Ti ends, else 0. And what I mean by that is Ti will sometime exhaust, right? Ti moves from A to B. Sorry. Damn it, one note. Okay. Ti moves from A to B to C, and then it will finally end sometime. And if we have found the end, what does that mean? That means that we have found some sort of combination, some sort of subsequence of T, some sort of subsequence of S, which is equal to T. This is exactly what we're looking for, and so we'll just increase the count by 1 over here. And if Ti ends, you can get the score of 1, otherwise get the score of 0. If you looked into the future and you kept on looking but you didn't get anything, so it's just no use, so we'll just return 0 over here. Each time we are also generating these sort of future cases, we are looping and finding the next Ti. And so given the case of, let's say this is the case, we are currently at A and it's looking for B. So one possible case is picking this B, one possible case is picking this B, and a third one is picking this B. So we will sort of run a for loop which will consider one B and then the next and then the next, and it will see what happens in the future after that. And this is the entire recursion logic. We'll come very soon to why that won't work, but that's just a very simple optimization on top of it. We'll write a recursion function with the inputs as SITI, as I already mentioned. And this guy is going to end when we'll say, you know what, if Ti is greater than equals to Tn, basically the nth of the target string, then return 1. There is also one possible case our recursion will end. Okay, let me go back, and if this time you try to figure this out. When is the next possible case where the recursion might end? We are only looking at the case of Ti, if Ti reaches the end or not. But there's also one possible case where Si just keeps on scanning but does not get any matches. And if it does not match, then Ti will never go ahead and look for the next character. Which means that Si scanned the entire thing but it did not get an answer. So if Si is greater than equals to S of n, then return 0. Si went and scanned the entire thing but did not return anything. So basically useless and will return 0. Okay. We're done with the base case, by the way. Now let's look at the main logic. We are maintaining this count equals to 0 and we'll return this count at the end, which is going to tell us how many possible cases we spawned off into the future. Basically, we're looking for the current Ti that matches. So we'll have S of j that iterates in the range of from the current all the way up till the very end, right? Si is the current guy. So S of j is sort of iterating into the future, and we'll say if S of Sj is the same as the target of Ti. If we have found a particular match, then what do? In this case, when we found a particular B, what did we do? We spawned off another recursion off from it. Okay, so we'll do exactly that. We'll recurse, and this time what is the current? It's s of j plus 1 and t of I plus 1. This is a heavy line, so pause and try to understand what's happening. And at the end, we'll do count plus equals to recurse of I. And that is going to give us the answer. Let's do a quick sanity check. We'll return the recurse of 0, 0. And we'll also need to set this s of n and t of n, which is the length of s and length of t. I think this looks about right. Let's hope this works in the first try. Okay, expected answer 3. Okay, this looks good. Let's try bag. And we'll have bag over here. By the way, this is a solution. If you try to submit this, you'll get time limit error. Okay, don't try to submit this. Now we'll actually analyze why this happens. Let's look at this recursion part over here. We're taking the input as s of I and t of I, which means that s of I can go all the way up till the s of n. So basically order of s of n here, order of Sn, yeah, this is correct. And we're multiplying it by t of n. So this is the total time complexity we are taking to recurse all of the possible cases. This is a very general thing. If you have seen other videos, this should be obvious to you. But there's another thing that's hidden here. This is this for loop, which is going to make things a lot harder. Because this is taking order of s of n, this is taking t of n, tn. This will now take order of Sn again. We may have to iterate over the entire future thing, which could be order of Sn. Which means the time complexity we're looking at is actually this guy. Doesn't look too good now, does it? Earlier, if it was s of Sn into Tn, we would be 1000 times 1000, which is great. But 10 to the power 9 just blows out of proportion, which will not work over here. Especially for Python, by the way. I'm not sure about other languages. In any case, we can do this. What can we do? We somehow need to optimize this for loop. This part looks pretty obvious, like we can't optimize this part, but maybe the for loop we can. I'm actually going to do one more thing. LRU cache as none. We'll convert this recursion to a DP, easy peasy. If you are in other languages, just have a 2D matrix that stores all of this compute. Okay. Now we want to optimize this guy and somehow figure out to convert this for loop to a simple statement. Let's come to the optimization part. Okay. So now let's talk about when does Ti move. When does Ti move? Ti moves when there's a match. So Ti can go Ti plus 1 if there is a match, and if there is not a match, then Ti remains as is. In fact, there are two particular possible combinations for every single current point of time, for every single s of I. If you don't find a match, then you don't have any more possible cases. You just want to move to the next pointer and hope that that will get you the answer. Basically, if you're looking at the current point of time and you don't have a match, that's just sad news. Move ahead, go further and do s of I plus 1. Ti remains as is because we haven't found a match. But in case you do find a match, what do? In case you find a match, you can always go Ti plus 1. Right, you found a match, you can now increase the pointer from, as we saw before, we can increase this pointer from A to B if you found a match. If. But what if you don't find a match and you okay, if we don't find a match, then that's fine. But what if we deliberately decide to skip the current match? Let me explain now. See, every time we go s of I plus 1, this should be clear. We always do s of I plus 1 since this is scanning the entire thing. But we only do t of I plus 1 when we find a match. That's also fine. But why have I then written these two possible cases? This is the case where it says that earlier we had this case over here and we were trying to find B. If we find out B, then we can now go ahead and look for C. if we find out C, then we can just say, okay, we have covered the entire string, we can return now. But when we are at this point A, I can choose to either go for this B or I can choose to not go for this B. I'm just reducing the entire for loop into a binary operation. I'm saying that at this particular point of time, I can say that either I find a B or I don't. Either I try to find this next possible B, I consider this B, or I'll just skip over it. I don't always have to look for the next value. I think this should make it more clear once we look at the code part, which is very, very simple. I'm actually just going to implement this guy over here. It's just copy pasting. So we'll, instead of this for loop, we'll reduce it down to a simple statement saying that, you know what, if you find a match between s of I, which is the same as t of ti, then we'll do some compute, else we'll do something else. If you don't find a match, then that was trivial, we'll just recurse. And we'll recurse with s of I plus 1 as usual and t of I, because we didn't find a match, so t of I remains as is. In this case, we can recurse with s of I plus 1, t of I plus 1. I'm looking for the next element now, or I can look for multiple copies of the same element. So in this case, I say that I am either looking for C now instead of B, and this case says that I'm going to look for another B. That is all I'm going to do. And we can just return both of their counts, and that should do it. But note one more thing, we are sort of repeating this thing again. So let's just pull it out. We'll have count equals to this guy, and this is just implementation, by the way. We do count plus equals to this guy and just remove the else. And we are done. Let's try resubmitting, running the code. Okay, count reference. Okay. Spelling error. Great. Cool, this works out well. And so we can just submit this guy over here. Let's hope it works. Cool, accepted. Okay, so this wraps up most of the solution, but if you're interested in looking for a iterative approach to the DP, I'll link to a write-up down below so that you can actually look for how to convert this recursive DP into an iterative DP, because iterative DPs are much faster in general than recursive DPs, because of the recursion has this recursion call stack thing, so that is a bunch of overhead. You can reduce and remove that in an iterative DP, which I'll link to down below. Anyways, this is a pretty long video right now, so I'll stop it right here. And as always, thanks for watching.